Morning.
You're gonna start. It's 10.
Good morning. It is almost 10 o'clock. My watch says now it's 1 o'clock, or now it's 10 o'clock. So anyway, it's 1 o'clock for me and it's 10 o'clock for all of you. So thank you guys all for coming. Well, it's mostly gals. Yeah, I'm the only guy. The rest of you are gals. So I'm glad you gals are here today. Today's class for agent development is probably a pretty significant issue, I would think, for all of you. I don't know how much sleep at night you guys are losing or, stressing over the increase in competition that's coming from agents that are outside of our area, but I know it's something that is really on my radar. It's been on my radar for a long time. And so today what we're planning to do is talk about, the issue of out-of-area agents and give you some tips and ideas on how to leverage your local real estate professional status in order to win more business. So, just to recap a few things, when you get your California real estate license, you are licensed to sell real estate anywhere in the state of California. So you can go all the way up north above San Francisco. You can go to San Diego. You can go out to Boron. You can go anywhere you want and sell real estate by virtue of having your California real estate license. That is very true. However, in Article 11 in the Realtor Code of Ethics, I'm going to read, in part, it states that realtors shall not undertake to provide specialized professional services concerning a type of property or service that is outside their field of competence, unless they engage the assistance of one who is competent or they fully disclose to the client their lack of competence in that. So, it's my belief that working outside of your geographic competence means that you're working outside of your field of expertise. Now, all realtors, and that's people that are members of NAR and CAR and our local association and other associations, they pledge to abide by the Code of Ethics. Yet there's a lot of agents that are very, very willing to receive a commission even when working outside of their expertise. And we'll talk about that a little bit, how expertise is changing now a little bit later. While this breach of ethics is far less bad than somebody that sends their client up, and says, hey, go find a house with, somebody up there and then just come back and write it up with me. It's still, technically a breach of the Code of Ethics. So here's exactly how bad the problem is. The numbers are pretty staggering, and numbers really, really don't lie. The percentage of out-of-area transactions in our MLS by market share continues to increase. I ran this a few days ago, again, just to confirm it. For the first 6 months of 2023, 19.65% of all transactions have an out-of-area broker. That means a non-member of our MLS is part of the transaction. That is almost 20%. That means that, we're reporting transactions in our MLS where there's a person on the other side of the transactions that's not in our MLS. In 2022, that number was 17.35%. In 2021, that number was 15.87%. And in 2020, that number was 14.35%. So you can see over the last 4 years, that percentage continues to increase. I think what's even more important for me is to go back to 2019, which was prior to COVID. That number was 9.9%. So in the last 5 years, the number of out-of-area brokers doing business within our MLS area that's getting reported in our MLS has doubled. And it has continued to increase since COVID. One last number that I'll give you is going back to 2010. In 2010, the number of transactions that were being done outside of our MLS were 6.21. Okay, so there have always been people that have been working in the Big Bear area that are not local to our area or members of our MLS, but the numbers have really gotten out of hand in the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't see a lot of smiling faces. Some of you, I just see black boxes, so I don't even know what you're thinking. Can't read your face as we're going through this. But that's a pretty significant number. And so, as we think about how, we feel about it, great, I get to see Laura now. So, how we feel about it is that, a lot of people think, well, that's not right. People shouldn't work outside of their area of expertise. They don't know what we don't know. They don't know what a stop and waste valve is. They don't know this and they don't know that. And so these folks should not be doing business in our marketplace. That's one thing that we hear all the time. Okay, so I want to share with you an idea that I picked up from a book several years ago. The name of the book is Freakonomics. It's a great book, talks about a lot of really interesting things. But there's an interesting passage in there that talks about the definition of morality and the definition of reality. And the way that they described it in the book is that morality is the way things should be, the way that we think things should be. And the way I think that things should be is that an agent that doesn't have knowledge of the Big Bear market shouldn't be doing business up here. They should be referring business to a local broker that knows the area. That's the way things should be. That is a moral question. The reality is defined as how things actually are. And how things actually are from a reality standpoint is that our market share right now is 20% of people that are outside of our MLS area. That's reality. Okay, so we have this conflict, how we think things should be and how things actually are. So, going a little bit further, you sort of go, well, what are the consequences of out-of-area brokers that are working within our Big Bear market? The first thing that I wrote down is commission dollars that are received by the real estate industry are not being spent in Big Bear Valley. That harms local businesses, the school system up here, youth sports programs, et cetera. The local resident agents that are up here would be supporting a lot of those activities, but when commissions are taken off of the hill, that money doesn't come back into our community. The local realtor charitable contributions are diverted away from local churches, Meals on Wheels, the local food pantries, et cetera. They make our community less vibrant. There's less competent disclosure. And this is sort of an important thing when you recognize, an agent that is doing a transaction up here that doesn't know a lot about the local market. There's going to be less competent disclosure made to those clients represented by agents outside of the area, which leads to more legal disputes, more lawsuits, and more errors and omissions claim, which if you're a broker owner, that's, and an agent, you don't really want to see those kinds of claims. From a more practical standpoint for the buyers and sellers themselves is that there will be a lot more unhappy buyers and sellers that learn surprises after close of escrow. They find out, oh, they don't have a stop and waste valve and they should have one. Or, there's, the new FHDS and the defensible space thing. They find out after the fact, after they've already closed escrow, that there's a problem with that. So there's unhappy buyers and sellers that become more unhappy after close of escrow when they get an unpleasant surprise. Another thing that happens a lot is that sales fail to close and get put together because there's unreasonable demands or inaccurate expectations by a broker or an agent that is working from outside the area. They may do inspections, or they may have sellers that pay for inspections, in Simi Valley that are not commonplace here. And when we say, hey, it's not commonplace here, we're not going to do it. The agent with their lack of experience may, tell their client, well, it's really necessary, and the deal doesn't take place. And another big one for us personally is that, all of us local agents become less productive personally when we're required to train and educate a broker that's working from outside the area. not only do we have to properly represent our clients, but we have to spend time selling the other agent on the other end of the deal about what's reality in our marketplace, what's customary in our marketplace. And it creates a much longer, sales cycle for the local brokers, in particular when we're asked to show up for inspections and different things that these other agents are not able to service. So I don't think I've given you guys anything that you guys aren't really aware of, but I'm going to finish up with another couple of things. Local affiliates lose revenue to other, affiliates outside of the area. And, when commissions are, sent to agents down the hill, it reduces the ability for us to operate our commission structure is going to shrink as well. Okay. So is there anything else that anybody wants to add to a negative consequence of agents that are working within our marketplace that maybe I didn't think of? Laura, why don't you speak up?
Thanks. Okay, so I had to unmute, guys. I had an agent, out of the area agent, that joined the other day. And of course, whenever we have someone that comes to us wanting to join from out of the area, the association policy is, we talk to them a little bit, and we talk about perhaps referring their client to one of our local agents. And things are even mentioned like, are you going to be coming up here for the inspections? Are you going to be here for the showings? Things like that. And this particular agent, I even actually asked, are you going to be staying at the property while it's listed? Because it was going to take a couple days to get that application in. Now, that agent said to me, do you know anything about the owl docks? I do not. Right? Perhaps you agents know. I believe it's over in the Eagle Point area. There's a dock area that is shared by some of the owners in that area. Not familiar. I don't think it's actually called Eagle Point, but it's off the Eagle Point area, kind of closer to the park maybe. But I don't know it called as the owl docks. I just know because I had a friend that lived in that area and had dock access when the water was high. But that's another thing. I told the agent, I said, I do not know. That would be something only our local agents would probably know, right? So right there's a reason why that property owner that is putting up their place for sale should be going with somebody local, because they are familiar with things like that. Another question that we frequently get at the association is, what kind of local disclosures do you have? Do you have anything special? And our response at the association, or my response, is always, if there are any local disclosures, our local agents would be handling those. Another reason to me why, if you're selling, why you would want a local agent, or if you're buying, right? Because you guys know about any special disclosures, about any docks that perhaps they have rights to. You guys know about anything that they need to know in the area. Another thing I'm bringing up is stop and waste. Mark, you talked about that. I had a friend on my street who, when they first purchased their home, nobody told them that there was a stop waste. So the first winter that they left, they only stayed in the summer. My husband mentioned to them, did you get your stop waste taken care of? Have you drained your pipes? Because they were not coming back. And a discussion was made about the heater and etc. Well, that was not brought to them when they purchased that house. Another reason you want a local agent. So yeah. I don't want to go on and on with you guys. I just wanted to kind of share a couple of things that has come up recently.
Yeah. So thank you, Laura, for that. That's real world examples of, having a lack of knowledge of the area not only is detrimental to the clients themselves, but is also detrimental to the agents on the other side. I mean, basically. So real life stuff. So, I wrote down three things, in response to the question, why do sellers list with out of area brokers? And why do buyers work with an out of area agent? Why do they do that? And I wrote down three things. The first one is that they're friends and family. They're close to these people. They know them, they like them, they trust them, and all of those kinds of things. And so that, to me, that's the number one reason why somebody would be using an agent from outside of the area. The second thing is money. And when I say that it's money, not only is it that a listing agent, that is used to working in a different marketplace might have a normal commission rate that is lower than the local rate. So, you'll see more 2% things being offered by agents that are from Palos Verdes than you will see them from Big Bear, that kind of thing. So sometimes it's money and we've lost a couple of listings to out of area brokers where when we've gone back to the client and said, why did you choose somebody from Redondo Beach? Well, because they charged me 4% or 3.5%, to sell my house rather than the 5% that you were quoting me. So sometimes it's money from a commission cutting standpoint below the local competitive rates. Sometimes it's because they're friends or family. A lot of times an out of area buyer will be working with an agent who is also a lender, and the lender will be getting both the commission for the loan as well as a commission for the sale. And because a lender is not necessarily somebody that works a lot in real estate, actively showing people properties, those are the ones typically that you'll see. They'll say, go up and find a house with somebody and then come back and I'll write the offer for you and do your loan. And they'll usually give them some kind of a kickback on the fee. So sometimes it's money where the client's getting, a lower commission rate on selling, or they're getting some fee, paid back to them at close. And the third reason that I wrote down is that the buyers are actually real estate agents and brokers themselves. And so they just don't really feel like they need to be hiring anybody other than themselves in order to do that. Okay. Last one that I wrote down was that the client doesn't know the difference between good and bad representation. And I believe that that's true. I think there's a lot of people that really don't know what good service is because they've never had it. Okay. How many times have you guys gone out and met a seller that doesn't like, typically a for sale by owner that does not like real estate agents, and you say, well, why is that? And they go, well, I had a bad experience, right? So some people have had a bad experience with a real estate agent on the listing side, and so they just assume that every agent is the same and that they're going to get bad service and bad experience from everybody. The same thing that happens with buyers. A lot of times buyers will reach out to an agent and the agent won't follow up. So they just really think that there's no difference between agents, or that they don't know any difference between good and bad representation. So I think those are the three things. The brokers are friends and family. Money is the other part of it, and that the people don't know the difference between good and bad service. Can you guys think of any other reasons why an agent would list with an out of area broker besides those three?
Sometimes, like my Meadowbrook one, the off the hill agent told the seller that the CRMLS was Big Bear's MLS, not that we had our own separate one. So she didn't understand why it would have to be a local when it was going into the same MLS with all the same people. Okay.
So I would say I'll use it in a nice way. It's a slight misrepresentation
Right.
of outside of your sort of
and
your
on her listing agreement, it says, is this the primary MLS for, and she marked yes. And I'm like, well, it's not, like, that's false right there. So that was one issue.
Okay.
Also, that's their agent that sold them their house off the mountain, their primary residence. That's their agent. And their agent says, sure, I can sell you a house in Big Bear.
Yeah. Yeah. So, sometimes it's, one of the three, sometimes it's a combination of all of those reasons and maybe some others. but from my perspective, after 38 years of being in Big Bear, is that, the bottom line is that service levels, professionalism, and accurate information is pretty much dumbed down when you have agents within the transaction that don't know, what's happening. I mean, a lot of times, even, if you go out of your way to educate, this other agent in a one-time transaction, they don't pick up all of the things that you share with them. They pick up little bits and pieces of it, and they misinterpret some of it. I mean, it's not their area of expertise. And so they're not giving the information to their client in the same way that you're giving it to them. So it really dumbs down the experience or the level of service that happens within our marketplace, which then creates an issue for all of us. It creates an issue for all of us agents, whereas when we're competing with agents from out of the area and it becomes more competitive, we're not their friends and family. Some of these people are, cutting commissions in order to get transactions. It means that we then start having to cut commissions in order to compete, which is not really a winning strategy, because then everybody just keeps lowering their commissions until it's a lose-win kind of relationship. I mean, you can't stay in business if you're not earning enough money in order to stay in business. Okay. So instead of competing on price and reducing commissions to win business, you do have some other options. Okay. So I'm going to make a big point here that I want you guys to really write down. It's the difference between features and benefits. Okay. The feature that we're talking about today is being a local real estate broker or a local real estate agent. That is a feature. That's something that we say to somebody is that, why should I do business with you? Well, I'm a local broker. Well, that is a feature. But clients don't buy the feature, they buy the benefits. And so I can't remember the acronym. So what's in it for me? WIIFI. Write that down. WII. What's in it for me? Okay. So, and this is sales 101, and Gina's got a great background of corporate sales experience. I mean, all of these things are fundamental, sales skills, is that whenever you offer somebody a feature, they're not going to buy the feature. They're going to buy the benefit that's associated with that feature. Okay. So a winning strategy to earning more business and overcoming the objections of working with agents out of the area is to remember that we are salespeople, and that not only do we have to point out that we have a feature of being a local broker, what the benefit is to the client for that. Okay. So here are the features, or here are the benefits for that feature. We can provide the clients better service. If they're a seller, by virtue of our local presence, we can save them by making sure that their home is secured every day of the week, not once a month when I come up or one weekend when I come up. We can provide them better security for their property by being a local person. We also can provide better service by going over in 10 or 15 minutes if there's a problem at their house, rather than the next day or 3 or 4 hours later. We can save them time by meeting inspectors and vendors, because we're here. It's a lot easier for us to provide proper service to our sellers in that way. We can also do the same thing with buyers. Okay, is that, because we're local, we've seen the property personally. That means that instead of the client looking at a property online and looking at pictures, and their agent looking in the MLS and looking at pictures, they've got a resource that's actually seen the house and can tell them what's on either side of the house, that there's cracks in the foundations. I mean, when was the last time you saw a home listed in the MLS or online that had a crack in the foundation where the listing agent prominently featured the crack in the foundation? That never happens. They would airbrush it out before they would feature it prominently. So you're going to be able to save your clients time in driving up to Big Bear and those kinds of things. You're going to be able to offer them less hassle and legal exposure by virtue of your local knowledge, the local customs, the local practices. There's always things that are different in every areas. I mean, some areas have a tremendous amount of moisture problems. Big Bear is not one of them, to tell you the truth. I mean, going across the country, there's a lot of areas that have a lot of issues with water. Big Bear doesn't have them. Consequently, whenever we have really, really heavy winters, we have a lot of water problems because a lot of things aren't built watertight every single time because we don't have a lot of water problems typically. Okay. The last thing that we can provide sellers in particular, as I was thinking through it, is we can offer them potentially a higher net return for savings for carrying costs by not overpricing the property. See, an agent that's outside of the area doesn't know the values as well as we do. I mean, pricing property in Big Bear is difficult to begin with, but when you're from out of the area, I mean, you got comps at $200 a square foot and $450 a square foot, and they have no idea why. I mean, it's like you throw a dart, and guess at what the price is. And that's not typically what happens. Whenever there is confusion in pricing, typically a seller is going to go for the higher number. And so that's going to lead to a lot more overpricing of the property, which means that it's going to sit on the market longer, which means that the owner is going to have carrying costs, which is going to eat into their bottom line. That's really what's going to happen to it. The other thing, by working with a local broker, they can also sometimes get a higher sales price because the local agent knows that the property is worth more than the average sales price in that neighborhood, or is going to be at the high end of the comps, or has a feature that is going to get a higher sales price. So we can provide them time savings, hassle savings, legal exposure, and we can also save them money and gain them extra money by our knowledge. Those are things that, being a local knowledgeable broker, are beneficial to the client. So whenever we talk with a potential buyer or seller and we say, hey, I'm a local broker, you have to follow that up with what are the practical things that you're going to be able to do for them that are in their best interest, what's in it for them. Okay. It's not going to be enough to say, hey, if you list with a guy from San Diego, I'm not going to be able to feed my family this month. If you list with the guy from San Diego, that means the charities in San Diego are going to get the money, but the ones up in there, they don't care about that. They care about what's in it for them. And so you have to be able to share those kinds of things with them. So I'm going to give you what I promised, which are some tips, tools, strategies, and scripts that you can use with clients when you're competing with out-of-area brokers. And, the very first thing that I would share with you is that some of these things are not specific to working when you're competing with out-of-area brokers. Some things are just simply good business practices. So the first thing I wrote down is don't be a secret agent. Okay, don't be a secret agent. Okay, be visible in the public. Present yourself as a working realtor, not just somebody that is in real estate. What do I mean by that? One of the things that I'll share with you about, having a personal brand that is a working realtor, as opposed to being a social realtor, is, goes back to, you guys probably would not remember this fellow's name, but Dr. Leisky was the high school doctor, local prominent physician in Big Bear for a lot of years. And he owned, a very expensive lakefront home over on Waterview that I want to say he sold probably in 96 or 97. That's when I want to say that he sold it. And Dr. Leisky and his wife were very, very involved in the community, and were very, very involved in Seroptimist and Rotary and all of these other organizations. I mean, Dr. Leisky was the high school team physician. And so he knew everybody in town socially. He also knew from a business standpoint that the light was on in Tim Wood's office at 5 o'clock in the morning and at 10 o'clock at night, because as he drove by that Coldwell Banker building, the lights were on in Tim's office at 5 in the morning all day long, and then during the evening. And when Dr. Leisky and his wife decided to sell their home, they went with the agent that they thought only sold real estate and only worked on selling, selling lakefront properties, that focused there. And all of the people that Dr. Leisky, I'll never forget this, is one of the agents that worked in the office at the time was so offended when Tim listed the property because they had socialized with them so much. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that when you are not being a secret agent, don't be a social person that happens to be in real estate, but make sure that you present yourself to the people in your social circles as a working realtor. So you need to talk to them about the business. You need to talk to them about what's happening in the industry. You need to talk to them about those things. Wear your name tag. Let them know that you're working. The second thing I wrote, down was, dress appropriately for work. We are in a resort market and things are a lot more casual. But if everybody sees you like you're always on vacation, they're not going to think that you're working. So dress appropriately for work. We talked about this, talk about real estate instead of bonding and making friends. A lot of times because we become so familiar with our friends and the people that we know, that we just simply talk socially with them all the time. And we think that somehow they're going to remember that we're in real estate. And if we're not talking to them about the business part of it, if they have several friends that are in real estate, then there's going to be nothing that differentiates us professionally from their other friends. Then it's going to be more of a popularity contest when they choose somebody. And if they have 5 friends, that means 4 people out of 5 aren't going to be the most popular person, right? So we want to make sure that we're talking about real estate when we talk to them. Be responsive when people ask you for things. When somebody says, hey, what's the value of this? Or, do you have any advice on that? Or who can I get to clean up my weeds? Or what can I do with that? Don't put it off, be responsive. When they ask you a question, be thorough. I think what I'm really telling you guys all is to do a good job, right? I mean, which is basic, and it doesn't matter whether you are competing with an out-of-area broker or whether you're competing with somebody local. By providing good service and good information and being responsive, that's a good business practice that will help you, okay? Don't be lazy. The last thing I wrote down on this issue is, make sure that your online presence, and when I say online presence, your website, your social media, your pictures in the MLS, make sure that it's a good representation of you and the quality of your business, okay? So often, people don't even ask you, tell me what you will do for me. They look at your profiles online and they can see by the quality of how you're interacting online, what to expect when you're representing them. So make sure that everything is a good reflection of you and your business. This is probably the most important. Talk to a lot of people about your service, your value proposition, and what makes working with you unique. Prospecting. There was a great thing for Mike Ferry this week on listing agents and prospecting and getting back to prospecting. A lot of times we lose listings to brokers that are outside of the Big Bear area because we're not prospecting. Somebody owns a house in Big Bear Lake and they live in Newport Beach, and they're not hearing from realtors that are working in the local market. The local brokers are not prospecting, reaching out to them, but they are socializing and talking with friends from Newport Beach, or they do a transaction with somebody in Newport Beach. So the first thing they think about when they are thinking real estate is they don't think about us because we're not prospecting. They think about the agent that they know. And so they call the guy from Newport Beach and say, hey, I've got a house up in Big Bear I want to sell. What should I do? Oh, I can help you with that. So you lose the transaction, not because you weren't the better agent, but because you never even had the opportunity to do a presentation to that client. I think that's probably the most important thing that I can share, with the agents and the people that are here, is that if you are not prospecting with people that are outside of the area, they're probably talking to the out of the area competition because they live there more often than they're talking with you. And that's one of the reasons why we're losing. The next point that I wanted to bring out in that statement that I made is, what makes working with you unique? Okay, so this goes back to one of the reasons why clients work with an agent from outside the area is they think that we're all the same. or that, so when you go on a listing presentation, you say, well, they go, what are you going to do for me? Well, I'm going to put a for sale sign up, and I'm going to put it in the MLS, and I'm going to get quality photos for you. I'm going to get professional photos. Well, guess what? If they interviewed 5 different agents, they would probably get those same 3 answers 5 different times. And so in the mind of the prospect, he's going to say, okay, well, I interviewed 5 people and all of them do exactly the same thing. And my agent from Newport Beach is going to do the exact same thing. And they're my friend, so I'm going to pick them. Or they're going to say everybody's the same, who will do it for the least amount of money. And because the guy from Newport Beach is their friend, he'll probably do it for the least amount of money, doing them a favor, if that makes sense. Any questions on that, or any experience that you guys have had with that one? No. Okay. So the steps that you can take, in order to, from a big level, to start competing more on working with clients, is to define your value proposition. What makes your service valuable? Okay. I can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself, but I can share, some of the list of the things that are on mine is that I have knowledge about the market values so that I can accurately price your property so you don't overprice and you don't give your house away for less than it's really worth. The other thing that I share with him is I know all the local agents in town. I know who's going to help work to put a deal together. I also know who's difficult to work with. So I'm going to be able to protect you from anybody that is not necessarily working for a win-win deal, but is working for a buyer-centered deal at your expense. We do professional photos, which is something, that is a must that has to be done. We're local. One of the things that we did in the past that we're not necessarily doing now is that we would go to your listing every week to make sure that it is secure. Make sure somebody hasn't left the doors open, that kind of thing. We'll be at all the inspections. We're here. So you talk about your value proposition. Okay. Learn how to articulate it. Make sure that you learn how to express it to your client. Okay. You can have the best service in the world and the best marketing plan in the world and the best knowledge of the market in the world. But if your client doesn't know that you have it, it's as if you didn't have it at all. Remember that we're salespeople. If we don't tell them what we can do for them, if we don't share with them what we can do for them, they're not going to know what we can do for them. Okay. It's as if we didn't have the skill at all. Okay. So, any questions before I go into some specific things that you can do right now with this one particular issue? The bad part about Zoom is you guys don't talk back to me. So I feel like I'm talking into a TV. Okay. So here we go. Starting today, raise your hand if you have lost a deal to an out-of-area broker on the buyer's side or the seller's side. I would have thought more. Okay. So if you have lost a deal or a listing to a broker from outside the area, the question would be, do you know why? Do you know why? And I don't know if you know why or not, but if you don't know why, I would start asking. Can you tell me why you listed with a gal from Newport Beach, rather than somebody that can provide local service to you up here? Leave it as an open-ended question. Don't do it meanly. Don't do it rudely. But from the standpoint of, providing better service to my clients, I'm curious why you felt working with an agent from outside of the Big Bear would be in your best interest. And then listen for the answers. See if it's one of those 3 or 4 things that we talked about earlier. Money, their friends, okay? That all agents are the same, that kind of thing. Ask them questions why. Why did they decide to do that? Okay. I would start asking people, if you haven't already lost the deal, if you get somebody, and I know this happens, this happens a lot, particularly with buyers, is they say, well, I have an agent from Newport Beach, or I have an agent from outside the area. The first question would be, have you signed an exclusive agreement with them? Because if they have, then you really shouldn't go any further. But if they have not signed an exclusive agreement with that person, you can sort of go after their pain points. And you, by asking really good questions, you can identify their pain points. One pain point would be, have you ever lost a deal that sold before you or your agent was able to get up here to Big Bear to see it? Have you ever lost a deal because your agent hadn't seen the property and you couldn't get up here in time and it sold first? Great question. If that's ever happened to them, that's a pain point. Second good question, have you ever driven up to Big Bear to find the property that you were looking at didn't look the same as it did in the pictures? So you spent 3 hours up, 3 hours back to find a house that, you know, wasn't quite what you were expecting. Okay. For sellers, have you ever had your home left unsecured for an extended period of time or had a problem like that? You know, have you ever called your agent and said, hey, I've got a problem up at the house? Did you have to come up or did your agent decide to drive up here? You can ask, trying to investigate what those pain points are. One of my favorite stories about the lack of service from agents that are doing listings up here is I actually, when we were previewing a home about 3 or 4 years ago, walked into a house that was listed with a broker down the hill, and there was a sign right inside on the kitchen counter that said, these bathrooms are turned off. I came up here and somebody used the toilet last weekend. Don't use the toilet. Go pee behind a tree. Go pee behind a tree somewhere. I mean, that was actually written on a note inside the kitchen of the house that we were showing from the agent down the hill. So you can share stories like that when you're dealing with somebody that is considering using an agent from outside the area, is you share, you know, what the pain points are, what the problems are. So because the clients may not know that it's a problem, especially if the agent down the hill tells them, oh yeah, I can do it, no problem. You know, there's no issues. Well, if you tell them what the problems really are, that may be enough to win you the listing. Okay. So going forward, ask your clients that are working with other agents outside of the area, why? What's the benefit for them? Probe their pain points. If you have ever had a problem related to the distance, have you ever had a problem related to pricing? Okay. If you can have those conversations with people before they make the decision to go to somebody else, it's going to be better off. You know, one of the things that we've learned is that when we started surveying people that we had lost to agents outside the area, they had already signed an agreement with the agent down the hill. And so after the people said, well, yeah, I used my friend because she sold me my house and she did it for, you know, she listed for 4%. After they would give us the reasons why she chose there, then the client would come back and say, well, you know, what do you think I should do to sell my house? Because, you know, this isn't working. Well, that really puts you in a bad position because you can't interfere with an agency relationship with that client and their agent. All you can do at that particular point is I wish we would have talked about this before you listed. You're going to have to go back to your agent, and unless that agent is willing to bring me into the relationship, I have to respect your contract with them. That makes sense? Okay, good. So going forward, ask the questions, have those conversations about the pain points. And then the last thing that you can do, and because our business is changing all the time, is to brainstorm with your mastermind group, brainstorm with your coach. Anytime you hear an objection, anytime that you hear a reason why somebody did business elsewhere and you don't know what the answer is, talk with your mastermind group, talk with your coach about it, talk with your peers about it. You know, the people that are in the office, hey, I heard this. What would you say in this particular situation? What's a logical response to this particular thing? Because I can't tell you, you know, what the issues are going to be, because the clients are what's most important. So here's what I get a lot of times when I talk with agents about these issues. They'll say, you know, my client wants to list with a broker down the hill, and I told him this, and I told him this, and I told him this, and I told him this. what do I do next? And I say, well, ask the client. Okay, what did the client say? Your response is going to be best served if you design it based on what the client said. See, I can give you all kinds of objection handlers, and I can give you pain points, and I can give you all of this advice, but those are not specific to your client. When you actually talk with your client and ask them the questions, they're going to give you the direction that you need to go to help them. Does that make sense? They're the ones that are going to tell you why they're considering their friend. They're going to tell you why they're working with their lender. They're giving me money back. They're giving me money back, or she's my friend. Well, if you have your friend refer you to me, she can get money and not have to do the work. She can get 25%, and I can give you great service. I win, you win, and she wins. Now, that's a good response to somebody that says, hey, that's a family member or a friend. Does that make sense? Okay, so I want to open this up for questions, any real life scenarios, any problems that you guys are experiencing that I can help you with before we end the class for today.
I just wanted,
go
go
Tina.
ahead.
Yeah,
You
no,
go
go,
first,
go,
Sarah.
go.
I was just going to say, I wanted to thank Mark because he stepped in a situation where we had a down the hill broker and lender strange thing. And that ended up working out just fine. I'm still working with the client. We'll see if, the deal comes together on a new property. And they actually do use me, but I wanted to thank you for stepping in.
Good.
What do we do when, like, I've had quite a few agents who are not part of the Big Bear MLS say, hey, can you send me the MLS agent sheet on a property? And I will only send them the client sheet, like the client view, since they're not part of our MLS. And they've had issues with that because it doesn't show commission and any of the confidential remarks. So what do I just continue to send the client one, or what's the way around that?
Well, here's what I know Laura wants to answer this, but as the broker, I'm going to give this to you. I'm sorry, I can't do that. The privileged information in our MLS, I signed an agreement when I joined the MLS that, that members only receive some information and non-members receive the rest. And so I'm providing you what I can provide to you. Is that the right answer, Laura?
Also, just keying in, according to our rules, up to a $5,000 violation fine for an agent that provides a member-only sheet. And since I have been here, that's only occurred one time, but I want to share with you what happened. An agent sent it to another agent, non-member. That non-member sent it to someone else. That person sent it to someone else. Ended up at an escrow office and was sent to us. Now, the fine did not get issued for $5,000 because that person came to the committee and discussed it and it was reduced. However, it does state, I believe, up to $5,000. So strong violation, and please, have them come to me if they continue to argue with you over that. I have had agents refer other agents that are non-members to me. You cannot provide our rules to them, of course, but you can say, like Mark said, I have signed an agreement. I'm not allowed to share that, right? And you can say it's an offense, it's a violation of our rules, and I am happy to back you up. I do like it if you call me ahead of time so I'm aware that person's coming, because then I can really rattle it off quickly to them, Just wanted to share that because I don't want to fine anybody. Our goal at our association is to educate and help you, but not to fine you. And so that one is a strong point. And that is something that when we have a new agent, I try and bring that up to them. So that's just the rule.
Thank you, Laura. Well, none of my agents better be giving out the MLS member sheet. Any other real scenarios? Oh, Kathy.
It's not a scenario, but I do have a question for you. You mentioned early on that you felt that selling out of your expertise was a violation of section 11 of the COE. Do you know of, or have you personally filed a grievance based on that?
Of working outside their expertise? No, I have not. I have not done it. I haven't tested it.
Okay,
I think the burden of proving that it's outside of someone's expertise, I think there's a good argument, but I don't think it would be a winning one, because it's expertise is not there's not a clear-cut rule. Okay. So, I'll give you an example. My standard of being a local broker is somebody that's gone through the Big Bear Property Specialist class that we did several years ago through the association, where, you learned about neighborhoods, you learned about, you had access to the airport's website and the fire district. There was this whole 2 or 3 day comprehensive thing where, when you went through that, you knew everything about this community that was reasonable. And it wasn't like 35 years worth of experience. It was like, in a 3 day class, you got access to all of this information. Well, there's people in our membership that are local that don't know that information. So, so what standard of expertise can you violate? Where you can get the violation. It's a pretty hard burden. Somebody that's local that knows, 60% of the information is going to know a lot more than somebody that is from Newport Beach that's been here once. And so, where do you draw the line on what's, where? And so I've never gone after it. Anybody else? Well, I appreciate you all coming. I know how difficult, this market is. One of the things that I can share with you is that this business has always been difficult. It's always been, sales is very difficult. We have a self-help industry, a motivational speaker industry that exists only to support salespeople, because we do with so much rejection, and we have when we get paid a lot of money, but we fail far more often, to close a deal than we get paid. And so, dealing with the rejection, dealing with the problems is so difficult. This is a great time to go back to basics, to recognize that 20%, 20% of our business is going outside of Big Bear. And that if we brush up on our scripts, we brush up on our marketing, we brush up on our prospecting and going out proactively, sharing with people what we can do for them and what the benefit is to them, we will win more business, and it'll be worth the time and effort. And this is the market to do it in. So that's all I have. Unless anybody else has anything, we will call it good for today.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate the time.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
everybody.
Mark.
Thank you.